So my name is Derek Sanders, and I am the Thurston County Sheriff elect here in Thurston County.
Thurston County Sheriff here in Washington. How is his audio, by the way? Good? So, Derek Sanders,
Yeah.
Thurston County Sheriff. How does it feel? Honestly, how
Busy.
Does it...
Yeah. Making the jump from deputy to sheriff has been quite the leap. Going from shift work where I'm just responsible for myself and what I do, and it's got to be there at 6 p.m. every night, and I'm off at 5 a.m. every morning. To now managing 260 FTEs and a $50 million budget. It's nonstop.
It's a lot,
nonstop.
right?
Yeah. Every day is another catastrophe that we have to somehow shore up and build back. So yeah, it keeps me on my feet.
So when I first met you, you were a deputy and you were still kind of like, I don't know if sheriff is the best thing, but something has to be done. Right?
Yeah.
And there was kind of that it was like that tipping point. Are you really going to commit to doing it and whatnot? What was it that made you really say, you know what, this is what I need to do. I'm the guy. Because I think it was about 12 years we had the same sheriff unopposed.
Yeah.
That was in this county, and we kind of had a stagnation of things going on.
Yeah.
And I think, what was it? It was probably early June when we first met of 2022, I think it was.
Somewhere around there.
And we sat down. I remember we sat down and you were like, I think I'm really going to go for it. Like, what was it that really made you just want to dive in and do it? Especially for being so young.
Yeah. Well, so just to give the backstory, so when, earlier that year, I was leaving this whole state. I was on my way out. I was done. I was remodeling my house to get it ready for the market. I was halfway through my Texas Peace Officer certification. I'd thought about leaving Thurston County Sheriff's Office a number of times just because I was unhappy with leadership. I kind of got into an argument with the sheriff. Some things were said back and forth, and it kind of turned into this well, if you think you can do better, then run against me. And I had never considered running for sheriff prior to that. And, part of it is that I'm petty, but the other part of it is that I was bored. That was my whole thing at the sheriff's office, was things were going bad. We had COVID. We had, police reform that was just gutting morale across the entire state and definitely our agency. And no one really seemed to care. We were just tanking. And at that point in time, I think we'd already lost 3 or 4 deputy sheriffs at that point. Which is unheard of. I mean, we don't lose employees. It was always this place where people wanted to come work and stay, and people would stay for 30 years. And you just started to see this shift where we're losing staff and we're not replacing them quickly. And so I figured, you know what, before I leave this state, before I completely give up on everything, I'll run for office. And if I lose, I can always just continue on my current trajectory. For all intents and purposes, I planned on losing. I didn't run to win. I knew I was young. I knew, especially for this job, I was super inexperienced. But I ran because there were so many issues that weren't going to come to light with an unopposed election. And when I was reaching out, no one was going to challenge the incumbent. And I'm like, well, someone has to challenge. I mean, I reached out internally, externally, and everyone's like, I don't want that job. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll run just for the purpose of bringing these issues to light. And my whole goal with this, I was a huge supporter of the prior sheriff, up until those last couple of years where I'm like, dude, it just feels like we've all given up.
Right.
And we got a lot of people counting on us at the sheriff's office, about to the tune of 150,000 people, just in unincorporated Thurston County. And so my whole goal with this wasn't to win. It wasn't to take over the sheriff's office. It was that I thought it would light a spark under the current sheriff to just change things, just do better, listen to people, take some input, and allow the people at the bottom to have some ownership in the agency. And then I was kind of going through it, and immediately, I mean, I became the black sheep of the agency, right? I mean, no one even wants to be associated to you. They don't want to roadside with you in the middle of the night. Right. They don't want to be seen eating next to you because you know, even if they support you, you know, the administration's watching, and they're watching who, because lines are going to get drawn in the sand, and it did. It fractured our department. It was a really rough year in 2022.
Because somebody had finally stepped up and said, you know, I'm going to go against the current boss.
Yeah, I'm gonna completely go against the tide. I'm gonna rock this boat as hard as I can,
And you have to when it comes
see
to
who
politics,
falls out.
right?
That was it. And so it was a really, 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 really lonely time for me because a lot of the people that I mean, there was just so much infighting, and then, you know, the agency took advantage of, you know, different spouts and things like that. They just capitalize on petty stuff, and
Just for the sake of the political campaign and whatnot.
Internal campaigns, they do weird things to people. And so it was at that point in time, it was actually June, I just met with you, and we were talking about all these different concepts, and, you know, I'm really going to dive into this, and I'm really going to run. But at that point in time, I was still not running to win. I was just running to bring awareness and then peace out. You know, like this will be my exit interview. Basically,
but at least people will have something to know, like in their mind, of what's really going on in the county before they make their final decision.
100%.
Which I think is really admirable, because especially going towards, you know, from deputy to now a political leader, it's not like a normal police job where you're just running the station.
Right.
You're responsible for a lot of people's lives outside of just the department itself, plus the jail, plus, you know, who knows what. I mean, you guys have civilian resource officers that come with you guys now for mental health crises, things like that, right? Which I don't think was, even if it was there prior to you being elected sheriff, there was no transparency there.
No one even knew it existed.
Exactly.
I was like, this is like an awesome, and that was one thing I always thought was crazy about the past administration is, like, they did a lot of good things, and they never told anyone about it, and so no one cared.
Nobody cares. And you can only care so much for a law enforcement agency when you only see bits and pieces. Because at the end of the day, when all you see is bits and pieces of your own department, but the mainstream media wants to, like you were saying, defund the police, it's kind of hard for people to even notice that, you know, you guys are doing great things, or even
we're making strides.
Community things.
This is one of the most progressive agencies in the entire country, I'll argue. I mean, when you look at Washington State and the way that we do police work, you know, people will complain, and because this is what they know. But if they go to, you know, Louisiana,
it's completely
or New
different.
York,
It's a
or
completely
Chicago,
different ballgame.
or even the Midwest, they do things way different.
Yeah.
And then people would really probably be happy. I mean, this is a region of the country where the training is better, the standards are better, the expectations are higher.
They have to be.
And as a result, the pay is higher, and all those. So there's all these things that come with the professional side of policing in this area of the country. You know, just looking at, like, some of the things we do different, like, some people complain about me sharing things on social media about, like, us taking suspects into custody and stuff. I'm like, man, in Florida, they put your face on, like, a wanted poster and mock you. And
It's in Walmart. It's everywhere.
Make jokes about it and stuff. And, like, for me, that's not professional, but, like, that's how they do police work in Florida. You know, they get up there with the newsstand and show off all the stuff they've done, and, you know, mocking, you know, gang members and stuff. And I'm like, that's not how, like, we try to focus on, sometimes there's humor in it, right? I mean,
there has
it's inevitable.
to be.
But
in human nature, there's going to come with some of that. And it's like, come on now. Some criminals do some things. You're like, were you even thinking about this, man?
But most of what we're really focused on is, like, these issues are happening. These things are happening, like, and a lot of people want to run away from it and pretend it doesn't exist, and it doesn't solve any of our problems. But, so anyway, so going through the election stuff and in the beginning of all that, it got to a point where I was ready to be done. I was so tired of it. And, you know, I would go to events, and there'd be like 10 people there, and I'd be like, this isn't going to win me an election, and no one really seems to care about everything that I'm trying to put out there for people. And I remember, you know, calling some friends and family and be like, I think I'm just going to pull out of this race because I gauged this whole thing wrong. Like, no one really cares, and people aren't really interested, and you know, it's just par for the course kind of thing.
Can I ask you right there, that feeling right there, it's hard, right? Because when you know inside, like, what's really going on in the community, and then you see the vast majority of people who have no idea or just don't care, it's kind of like, dang, like, what can I do to get these people to just give a damn? right? And a lot of it isn't even that they don't care; it's just they don't know.
Yeah.
They just don't know.
What was super crazy to me was experiencing things. Like a good example of some like deputies committing crimes and being allowed to keep their jobs.
Yeah.
And I would go tell people that, and they'd be like, "No, they don't." And I'm like, "No, they do." I even PDR'd the internal investigations. These are criminal affidavits that we did nothing about. And they're like, "You're lying." And it was one of those things where I think a lot of what I was bringing up during the election was such a shock to people, they couldn't accept it.
Yeah.
You know, they were having that syndrome where, like, they won't believe what's actually in front of them, even if the evidence clearly points out that people are like, no.
Because it's been the same way for so long.
Yep. And so I was ready to be done, and, you know, my friends and family were like, well, why don't you just stick it out? The primary is right around the corner. August 1st, primary election, why don't you just stick it out until you could just see how that first election goes. And even the campaign team that I had hired was a group of all-stars, but they were like, if we can just be within 15%, that was our goal. 15%. We were trying to be down 15%. Like, if we could just get to a point where we're only down 15, maybe we can squeak out a 1-vote win by the end of the general. And so I agreed to stick it out, and I remember I was on my way to do to try and ask for an endorsement from the Tumwater Fire Department, and I had already gotten kind of the download that they don't endorse candidates. They've never gotten involved in county politics, so you can go talk to them, but it's a waste of time, basically. Right. And on my way there, I realized during my campaign I was so focused. I was bent out of shape because the Deputy Sheriff's Association didn't endorse me. And I was like, I'm one of you. I'm running to make this better for you. And they stayed neutral. They were like, we don't want to get involved.
They didn't back either.
They stayed neutral.
I guess that's kind of like...
But I'm like, help me control your own destiny. I'm going to make this place better for you.
Right.
And they were like, nope, we're staying neutral. And I was bent out of shape. I was ready to be done because I'm like, well, if the union doesn't support me that I'm trying to make things better for, then why am I even doing this? I'm on my way to, Tumwater Fire Department, and I'm like, I've been going about this whole thing the wrong way. I'm like, why do I care as a number one priority what the union thinks? What does the community think? What do they want? What are they lacking? And it changed something in my mind. And when I got there, I went into the Tumwater Fire Department union, and I just started going off on all the different things that I was going to change, not for the union, but for the community. I ended that thing, and I'm like, any questions? They asked a few, and I'm like, okay, thank you guys so much. I appreciate your time. And 10 minutes later, I get a call, and they're like, we're endorsing you. How much money do you need? And I was like, whoa. And I did it again and got another endorsement. And I did it again and got another endorsement. And I'm like, this is turning into more than just I'm bringing issues up. This is turning into a grassroots revolution within our agency. And August 1st comes around. I'm working on a reckless vehicle hit and run, and I came back, and my phone, I've never seen a phone try to take so many calls and text messages. It went in social media updates and tagging, and I'm like, what is going? And they're like, you're up 5% in the primary election, and it's on National Night Out, so
people know
the sheriff and all the canine, they're all out doing events and stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm actually winning.
Yeah,
I'm not behind. I'm up 5%, and 5% is not a small number.
This is August.
This is August.
So we had June, July, August. I remember doing parades and stuff during the summertime. So that's a short amount of time to go from just being under 50 as a goal. From we want to be at least under by 15% to being over
20 point swing, and I'm like, and then I realized, right. Now, because at that point, my opponent hadn't campaigned one time. He was basically like, I'm the sheriff and I'm getting voted in because of my name. Yeah. And I was like, you're probably right. you know?
Right.
And then I kind of like sat in my car for a minute after the call, and I'm like, oh no. And sure enough, that night I get the notice that I'm under investigation and all these different things, and I'm like, yeah.
From the department.
From the sheriff, and I'm like, oh, things are changing drastically, right? I mean, I'm now going to see what it looks like for someone who is extremely powerful and holds a lot of weight over me in my position, and really flex that authority on me. And I'm like, well, here it comes. And so, going forward from there, though, when he put me under investigation, which was a totally bogus investigation, it was so wild. And the fact that they kept it all internal and didn't see the conflict of interest and have another agency take the lead on that, right? And have a third party, have it be neutral. I mean, they controlled the narrative every step of the way. They founded things that, people contradicted and said didn't happen. And that was actually the point in time where I was like, you know what? Now I'm going to whip your butt by 10%. Right. Now I'm upset. Right.
Because
now you're coming after my integrity and my character. I went my whole life, 27 years, 28 years of never having a complaint against me for anything like what they alleged. And now as soon as I beat you in the election, you give me 3 hours before you launch an investigation.
Doesn't seem suspicious at all, right?
Yeah, and like that, and I don't like to compare myself to Michael Jordan, okay? But if you watch his documentary, there's one piece of that documentary, because I'm not a good basketball player, I'm not a legend, right? But there is one piece that I really related to, and that was I don't need anyone to attack me or make fun of me or mock me to have that internal fire to do good. But if you do, it unlocks a whole side of me where I'm the only thing I can focus on is the search and destroy. I'm going to complete the mission no matter what.
Exactly.
And so him putting me under investigation ultimately resulted in a complete butt whipping in the election, because I doorbelled 3 times as hard. I campaigned 10 times as hard. I went to 5 times more events. I woke up every morning with 3 hours of sleep knowing that my opponent was still sleeping.
And still working the road.
And still working full time. Yeah.
At the same
and
time.
Dealing with the staffing shortages
Right.
and working overtime. I mean, I was averaging 3 to 4 hours of sleep every day through that campaign. I'm I'm going to whip you so hard into the ground just because you did this. And it ultimately, I beat him by 11% in the general and became the youngest sheriff. But it was just that whole thing took me to another level that, I don't usually even operate at, even to this day, right? Because now, I mean, as the sheriff, everyone's nice to me. There's very few people who are mean or really light a fire.
Exactly.
But when they do, I'm whew, all right, I'm
ready.
I'm gonna solve this problem. I'm going to do the best I can to alleviate these issues and do the best for the people.
That's at the end of the day. I think that's what's most important, is putting those other issues aside and being there for the people. What do the people see? Mm-hmm. What are they experiencing? And what do they need help with? Right. Where can we actually help them? And, when I sat back and looked at it just in the past couple of years that I've been back here, how many town halls have been done prior to you? I don't remember. I don't remember ever hearing about any, And that's the kind of transparency that I see, not only as just a resident here in the community, but as a father, as a parent, as someone who's gone through the system himself. It's good to see what issues you're dealing with on the first hand, just staffing shortages and the budget, where they wanted to cut the budget, right?
Yeah. And
people have to see the second, third, fourth order effects of what that looks like, and for you guys to still have to operate at 100%. And I don't mean operate as in manning 100%, but your mentality has to be 100% when you guys are on the road, when you guys are doing whatever. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is you also have to work the road. You also have to investigate. You have to show up to these meetings and this and that. And people don't understand. It's kind of hard to do when you only have so many people.
Yeah. And we have a lot of people in the agency that are doing way outside their scope. I mean, they're doing the jobs of 3 or 4 people.
3 or 4 people, right.
And they're doing it on extended hours, on mandatory overtime. But that's, and since taking office, I think the biggest thing the biggest hurdle I have is that government works slow, and I don't. I don't have, I have an extreme sense of urgency, because every day that goes by, there's someone working on night shift who's really, really tired. Right. They're really tired, and they're at their breaking point, and we're running into, kind of a crash at some point where they're either going to make a mistake and get hurt or hurt someone else, because they're being pushed beyond
what their
limitations are, or they're going to leave. And either way, it doesn't create a sustainable model for the sheriff's office.
Right.
And there's so many factors that go into it, but part of the thing that I'm experiencing is getting even basic changes done takes so long. We'll notify another office or another agency, hey, we really need this. and 5 months later we check up and no one's worked on it. And I'm like, it's been 5 months, right? And like I need certain things done because I think where I'm not fitting in is I'm not looking at 2024. I'm not looking at 2025. I'm trying to figure out what this place looks like in 2040 when I'm retired,
right?
And I need the services that this agency provides. As a retiree, like,
exactly.
Like, is there going to be people available to respond to my emergency?
As we're growing as a county as well.
As we grow, we're one of the fastest growing counties, and are there going to be corrections deputies there to actually hold the people that victimized me in custody, right? Is the prosecution going to be properly funded so that they can actually prosecute cases in a timely fashion? Are there going to be enough judges? I mean, these are all things that I have significant concerns about as we see the growth and the growth of the population and the lack of growth within the county, for employees and programming and infrastructure. Infrastructure is a great example of where the sheriff's office has been so neglected. I mean, they have moved us around to different offices within the county where we don't fit. They don't renovate things for us to actually meet our needs. And so as a result, I've got a jail bureau. I got the jail. That's where my jail works out of, obviously. Then I've got the courthouse where I work out of, which we're all crammed in there. And then I've got a field operations building that's leaking water all over my sergeants who are sharing an office 2 to a room for a single-size office.
That's current.
That's current. That's where we are currently. I mean, and so these are all things where I'm just like, and how do I retain those employees who are walking into a rotting building?
Right.
And
they're just doing their job.
When I'm hiring someone,
and you have to show them the truth.
Anthony, come on in and sign the paperwork, and they're like, what is this?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you go to Pierce County, glass palace everywhere. Extremely nice, setup. I mean, we currently, and I'm working on it, we don't give off the vibe of a professional full-service agency. We don't. I mean, we bring new people in, and they see tired, burnt-out employees, and they're seeing buildings rotting away, and they're like...
It's like, where's the spark? Like, what's going to want them to want to stay here?
Is this a county that really takes care of what it has and owns it?
Or is it just, this is as good as it gets? And I noticed something, because I wasn't ever really following local politics as much until I got to really meet you and learn what is actually going on and how things work. And I wanted to ask you, do things operate and work differently than you thought before actually taking hold of the job? For instance, like trying to get something done and pass, having to jump through hoops, whether it's through the commissioners or et cetera. Because I was under the impression that the sheriff could pretty much just operate and do what they wanted as long as it's constitutional. And then I find out, whoa, in order to get budgets and policies and things like that, you got to jump through hoops, talk to the commissioners, get them on board and whatnot.
Yeah, between
what is that like?
The problem is there's three interested parties, and we all have about equal authority to get something done. You've got a union on one side, I'm in the middle, and the county on the other side. And I spend most of my time trying to align everyone. Because
get everyone on the
I'm
same
in the position
page.
where I can see the vision, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but the other two parties can't. And there is where it becomes a real big challenge to get everyone in the room to come to an agreement on how we can move forward in a manner that stabilizes the agency and retains good people and is enticing, but then also doesn't break the county's back financially.
Right.
And therein lies, if you could solve those things, you should go be the president of the United States.
A lot of it comes down to budgeting. Is like, how much can we get done with the X amount of dollars, X amount of personnel?
And counties are funded so differently, and it's all so complicated, and it just seems like it's a system in place that is not designed for people to understand.
Yeah.
That's what it really comes down to.
As a voter, it's kind of confusing because I remember last year we were voting whether or not we needed 2 more commissioners.
Yes.
And we got 2 more commissioners. Mm-hmm. And then you look at like the salary of the commissioners, like, okay, well, where did we come up with that money?
Budget cuts.
For 2 more. Yeah, and then you know what I mean? And then you find out that they cut budgets from elsewhere to fund that, and it's like, wait a minute, how necessary is it to have those extra commissioners versus having extra deputies or extra support within the department?
The
You
one
see what
thing I
mean?
will say, and the reason that I supported going to 5 commissioners, and again, this is where, like, the layers, there's so many layers of complexity, and one of those layers of complexity is that there's a law that with 3 commissioners, they can't talk to each other.
Really?
Yeah, if 2 of them talk to each other, they have a quorum and they can vote on things.
I guess that makes sense. You know?
And so what we had was a system where, like, I mean, think about this, right? Let's say there's a basic funding request I have through the commissioners. I have to go meet with them individually, get them all separately on board, and then once they get into an actual commissioner meeting, now the other influences come in, and things can completely go to waste.
Really?
So I couldn't even go talk to 2 commissioners at one time. It's illegal. Can't do it.
So you have to individually.
I had to go individually, and then they can't talk to each other. So I mean, think about this. Let's say that I wanted to get something changed, or I wanted to cause discontent amongst the commissioners. I could go meet with with one commissioner and tell them one thing, and I could go meet with another commissioner and tell them the complete opposite, and go meet with a third one and tell them something right in the middle, and just watch them operate in confusion. And not being able to talk in pairs, and like that's the other thing, they can't assign anyone to like do a subcommittee. So you couldn't have 2 commissioners go get to work on like law and justice reform, and then bring something back to the entire board publicly. Can't do that. Now we can. So now
because
with 5
we have the
commissioners-
additional people.
So now with 5, 2 people can break off, and it's not a quorum. You just couldn't do a group of 3 now.
Because it would be too close. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So but that's the level of complexity that our government operates at, and
But that's things that we as the people have no idea about.
yeah,
It's
a nightmare.
We have 2 more commissioners, but like, what do they do?
Right.
I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, there's a certain amount of commissioners, and they are responsible for like a district. Is that within the county? Is that pretty much how it works?
They're all associated to a district
Within our county,
within
right?
our county.
And then, if I know right, they would work with the representatives that we have at the Capitol order for certain things like Proposition 1 and things like that. Is that how that works?
Yeah, the state officials don't seem to get very involved in local propositions. You know, they'll endorse it, but they're just kind of like, what is it? And then they kind of move on because they're extremely busy. They got a lot of stuff. But yeah, there is kind of this flow, if you will, back and forth of, you know, like we just met actually with state representatives at a commissioner breakfast, and we all went around the table and said what our legislative issues are, and you know, the representatives take their notes and then they head off and
get ready for session.
Coming up, and so it's yeah, the political world and all of this, it's very complex and it's very confusing, and it's not designed for someone like me to understand. It just isn't. Right? It's like for me, like I understand policing concepts. That's my real world. Mm-hmm. You get into budget and what you can and can't do. Like I had to learn that I have 2 separate budgets and I can't move money between them, even though I'm one office. I'm one elected official in charge of 2 budgets, and I can't move money back and forth. So I've got a patrol budget, which is our law enforcement, our deputies, that are extremely tight and underfunded. I've got a jail that's got a number of different sales tax funding sources going into it. I think our variancy next year is we're supposed to have like $3.4 million in vacancy savings, and I can't shift any of that money over
because it's already
dedicated.
Specified and dedicated.
It just goes right into the jail. The jail fund cannot be moved back and forth, and so it creates like so much internal animosity because for the jail we can afford to do a lot of things, and people within the same office, same agency, are looking across at their jail, getting training or getting, you know, double time for overtime, and I can't afford any of that for patrol. I can't do anything. In fact, I'm slashing overtime or training just to make ends meet on this side. It's such a complex world, and then you end up having to play all these games where you've got to find creative ways to bill the jail for things that like kind of help the whole agency, like hiring, getting background investigators. Well, we created 3 background investigator positions that didn't even exist funding wise, by using jail money and dedicating them just to the jail to do backgrounds.
But you couldn't use those
creative.
investigators since they're paid for the jail. Could you use those investigators for patrol to help? Also, you couldn't even use them for.
But at least then we can use our current background investigators to do just patrol. So we're trying to get creative with how we split the money and how we handle all of this. But the one thing I'll say is that our ability to get creative over the last 11 months, I think, has built a lot of rapport with the county commissioners because they see that, he's trying. He's coming up with unique ways to save money and move positions around and reclassify things and kind of redirect resources.
Thinking outside of the box.
Thinking outside the box, where I think a lot of times before it was very much just, we're underfunded, pay us more. We're underfunded, we need more money. And while we're still saying that, we are, I think, giving a pretty good faith attempt at resolving the issues internally.
Well, a lot of that comes from just the transparency. Like, we see every day there's something that you guys are working towards.
Yeah.
And something good. And that goes a long way for the people. And I see just what social media can do. When people read the reports and go into detail, like some of those published reports, it's like, it's amazing what you guys are able to do still while being so short-staffed, while being to me, and I don't think a lot of people understand, you're one department, and it's amazing how much you're still getting done.
Yeah,
without that, and it shows the level of leadership.
There's a lot of dedication.
Well, it shows the level of leadership that you have when you're influencing your team. You have a good team that's working with you, getting stuff done. And because of that, it shows how hard these guys are working still for you.
Yeah, they're working really hard, and that's in the jail. That's our support staff. That's patrol. I mean, they're all doing way more with way less.
Exactly.
And again,
I was there. You see where that spark comes from, because that spark was not there before. Even with the issues you mentioned before, the falling apart outpost that you currently have, right? But even with that, you're still motivating and bringing people in to see and look, we can build better. We can actually use what we have and still try to be better.
Yeah.
Instead of just accepting this is where we are, and it's as good as it gets. Because it seems to me a lot, not just in your department, but the county in general, there's a lot of, well, this is what they voted for, this is as good as it gets. Kind of deal with it and wait until next time, And the proactiveness is almost non-existent. When you don't see people being proactive within the community, it raises those questions like, what's really going on? What are we voting for? Yeah. Where is the money really going? And there's no transparency other than the department.
Yeah.
Your agency is the one that we see throughout the county that's showing the people actively what it is, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, there's bad. I mean,
you know what I mean?
You can't manage 260 people and have everything be good.
I don't see any commissioners doing town halls or anybody doing that on a regular enough basis for the regular people can see and ask questions what's going on.
Yeah, and part of that, I think that's changing. Like Commissioner Mejia does town halls all the time. She does now. One area that I will say, right? I mean, the commissioners are doing a kind of work that people, aren't actually interested in. They just like to complain sometimes, right? There's a lot of people that don't actually want to go listen to Commissioner Mejia talk about legislative and funding and funding sources and all these things. They just complain that I don't like how it's being done. So in the commissioner's defense, it's a lot easier for me to go to a town hall because people want to know about car chases. They want to know about foot chases. They want to know about exciting police work and new programs that they really feel are going to impact them, because our state is starting to drift away from the core concept of government. And one of those core concepts is public safety.
Yeah.
I mean, if the government cannot keep its citizens safe, what you start to find is that a lot of the other things people stop caring about.
Yeah.
They stop caring about electric car programs when their car gets stolen.
Exactly.
They stop caring about, how much does gas cost when they get carjacked at gunpoint. Those things go out the window. If you've never been a victim of a significant crime, you recognize in that time that what you actually care about is having enough police officers and having enough resources and having things on the back end, too. It's not just about the point of arrest. It's also, once they get into jail, is there actually a path forward so that we're not re-arresting this person over and over and over again? So the restoration is part of this conversation. It's not just about being heavy-handed and arresting everyone and getting them into jail and hoping they rot in prison forever. Now, there's a select few in the public that I think that we are all in agreement on that that's going to be their future. But for a lot of people, especially with property crime and things like that, we want to restore them and get them to a point at where they're productive members of society and not victimizing others. But
that's not the path that we want them on.
For the commissioners, it's a tough deal for them because people, it's so complex. Their world is it's probably more complex than mine is, because I can talk to people. Like if I start telling you about a vehicle pursuit, you immediately have images in your mind of what that looked like. If I start talking to you about the treatment sales tax and how that funding source is going into the jail and where that funding source goes for a program inside the jail, you can't even start. It's hard for you to even start formulating what that is, and what I'm talking. And then I lose you. And
at a certain point, it just becomes words.
It just becomes word mash, mix up. It's just word vomit. And then I can bring you right back in by saying, so then we were in a foot chase over a fence into a swamp. And the taser was deployed. And you're seeing all of these things because it's much easier for people to visualize things they've seen before. You get into budget, and you're going through documents, and you're looking at spreadsheets. And thank God I have a great financial chief, because...
once you can show people exactly what's going on, where it's being spent and whatnot, it's kind of easy for people to make a decision. It's like, okay, well, look, it's right there in front of you.
It's been a lot easier. Like for me, what I've tried to focus on is more of like, I don't want to get into the weeds of budget, because that gets so complex. And I try to explain to people on social media, and they're like, you lost me. And I'm like, I know. But like, we've tried to share more of like the county commissioners funded an upgraded fleet for us, right? Because we don't have nice buildings. But we do have take-home cars, and we'd like those to be capable vehicles for our deputies, since that's their office. And people are like, okay, well, I've seen what a sheriff's deputy vehicle looks like before, so, okay, they upgraded the fleet. Like, at the base level, people can understand some of the concepts there, and then, they can weigh in. Some people are like, it's a waste of money to invest in better cars. And I'm like, okay.
Maybe invest in better mechanics.
I don't know, right? But I do know that it was important to the deputies. One of the biggest complaints was when they defunded some of our police stuff for our equipment and our vehicles, and people are like, we already have so little. Can we at least have the good equipment?
Right. At least give us that.
At least give us something, right? We know we got to work in these terrible buildings, but at least give us some.
Meanwhile, you have a sister agency that looks to be doing pretty well.
Well, Pierce County is hurting too for their own reasons, but at least they can fall back on like nice infrastructure and better pay. And
but they have a whole different slew of kind of issues
that
they're dealing with in Pierce County.
They're dealing with the violent crime like no one else is probably. So, and that's the biggest thing that we all have to accept, is that no matter where you go, doesn't matter if you're in Thurston, Lewis, Pierce, King, Snohomish, East Side, West Side, North, South, everywhere has problems. We all have our own unique issues. We all have our own unique issues, and there's no getting away from it.
People are starting to see that more or less. It's like not just what we kind of talked before a while back, response times and things. People are starting to really realize like what that really means. When you only have so many people to do so many different things, wearing so many different hats. And you still, like I told you before, are expected to perform at a high rate, high efficient, every time.
Yeah.
And when you have guys on the road that are overworked and they're feeling like, well, I could just go to this other department, I have to worry about the stress. As the leader, what are some things that you do within the department or just within like your guys to keep them motivated? Is there anything other than just like the transparency that you do to help keep your guys motivated?
Well, it's just kind of been a perfect storm of unfortunate things. I mean, so, pay is a huge thing for people. Now, we can say that, I'm not here for the money, but at the end of the day, everyone's got to get paid.
Right.
And when you look at your self-worth, you're always going to compare yourself to something. So, like, right now, it's kind of tough because the deputies are in their last year of their contract. And when you're in the last year of your contract, there's a really good chance that all of your comparables are making way more money than you, because now it's time for the county to probably bring them back up into the... So right now they're like, we're underpaid, we're going into contract negotiations. But there's been a number of things that we're trying to implement. And like I said, it's just not going fast enough for me, but we're trying. We're really trying to revamp the employee wellness. I mean, I met with a chiropractor who was like, listen, like, I love law enforcement. I would love to do basically a no cost. I'll provide treatment for all of your employees at no cost. And I said, well, that's actually not the issue, because our insurance is great. You know, I can go get, I think, 30 chiropractor visits a year, right? My insurance pays for it. I said the bigger issue is that when people are working extremely long days and they're trying to spend every waking moment either taking care of themselves or spending time with their family, the last thing people do is go to the doctor, right? Yeah. Especially cops. Cops don't. They're like, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine.
I got to keep going anyways, right?
And I said, but what about a different concept where if we end up getting this new building, what if we just create a little office for you? And every Friday, you're in there for 8 hours, and employees can come in on their day off or while they're working and get a 20-minute adjustment. And he's like, that's genius. And so, like, those are some of the things that we're trying to start incorporating is instead of it always being on, like, for me, the biggest issue, like, employee wellness is something that I'm pretty passionate about, but if you look across the country at most employee wellness programs, it's all a system where the burden is on the employee to do the employee wellness, right?
And what's actually given to them to where they can just come enjoy themselves or just
what's the lowest barrier way that we can get people into things that actually contribute to real employee wellness? Because to a lot of people, employee wellness is like the employee assistance program, the hotline. And I'm like, man, ain't nobody calling no hotline.
Right.
I've never used that
on
in my
their
life.
day off. That's the last
I've
thing
never used that in my dang life. And so we're looking at all this, and I'm like, well, you know, like one of the things in the jail is we're building a gym inside the jail for our employees to use, so that they can get their workouts in on their lunch break.
Right.
And when they're done with their 16-hour shift, they can go home and get some rest.
They don't have to worry about also going to the gym.
You got to worry about that. And then, you know, and it's so tough in law enforcement because everyone expects us to be Superman and super in shape. And I'm like, when? I'm not going to lie. I've worked out 0 times since I took office. I've got no time. I have no time.
After the accident,
I have no time. Yeah, I had an accident. Like, I haven't worked out one time. I've not hit the gym once. Now, I've played some basketball to try and stay relatively in shape.
It's hard to stay consistent with the amount of man hours that you're pulling.
And my employees are going through the same thing. And so, like, we're trying to incorporate, like, workout on duty. We're trying to incorporate, like, an internal chiropractor. We're trying to incorporate there's a company that does like fresh vending machines where they swap everything out, you know, every 2 days. So I want to put those in our building so that employees basically get a meal ticket once a day and they can go get a salad instead of going to McDonald's. But those are the things where it's bringing the wellness to the employee and making it really difficult for them to say no. Because again, short term, a lot of people are going to be like, that's a waste of time. That's a waste of taxpayer money. They just need to do their jobs and go home. But once again, I'm trying to figure out what this place looks like in 10, 15, 20 years.
Right.
And
you need the
when you've got employees
yourself.
who are overweight, out of shape, unhealthy, they've been eating like crap for 15 years because we've demanded so much out of them. You know, my question is, you know, what does that look like for people calling in sick? What does that look like for L&I work-related injuries? What does that look like for people having catastrophic medical issues on duty? Can we actually afford that? Can we afford that? I'll give you an example. So everyone's union protected, right? If we had an employee have a heart attack tomorrow, that person doesn't lose their job. They don't get fired. They take up a spot while we try to get them figure out what their next step is. So they may be off duty but holding up a position for 2, 3, 4 years until we finally get through the fitness for duty and hopefully bring them back if they're able to. But if they're not, then they got to settle with L&I and figure all that stuff out.
And they're still holding that spot.
And meanwhile, that's a position taken. So these are things that we can't actually afford when you look at this long term, but we're currently dealing with it. We've had people on L&I for years taking up spots that we can't fill. And it wasn't until I got into office where I'm like, listen, we need a fitness for duty to figure out, like, can we get this person back to work, or do they need to start going through the separation process where they get to medically retire?
Right.
I'm like, whatever the employee needs, we're here for it. But we need to start this process.
Yeah,
we can't just sit here in L&I limbo for 3 years. Like, that's so unacceptable. So those are the things that we're trying to change, and I'm trying to make sure that in the future, our employees still going to have issues and illnesses and all these different things. Absolutely, but can we mitigate some of it and at least get to a point where we're not? I mean, because we're desperate for bodies right now. We're desperate.
And that's another thing I've noticed too, is trying to find the qualified individuals that can meet the standards, that want to be there, it's not as easy, it seems, even with this the state being higher in pay for most law enforcement jobs around the country. I've noticed it's still hard to get people to want to do the job right now, that are even qualified. Are you guys finding that in your department as difficult as, let's say, like I know within the military it's extremely hard right now. Within my own volunteering organization, it's hard to find qualified bodies. Are you guys finding that as difficult as some of the standards have gone? I don't want to say gone down, but there's been different changes in some of the standards, timelines for marijuana use and things like that have changed. Are you still finding it difficult to find individuals that are qualified?
We've kind of updated some things like cannabis, right? So we reduced it down to just time of hire. But right, like for the patrol division, no. I've got almost 400 applicants for patrol right now. I have 8 vacancies. My biggest issue is that I took over an agency that couldn't hire people. We had one part-time background investigator.
Oh, so it's not really that you don't have people interested. It's getting them screened and processed.
And you figure a background for one person can take 2 to 4 months,
right,
to get them hired. And we had one person doing it part-time. What am I doing with it? So now we have 5. We're working on getting it up to 15 background investigators.
Keep that
just
process
to keep
going.
that process running and actually dig us out of this hole. It's a hole that you can't dig yourself out of without spending some money to dig yourself out.
Right.
And so because we can't not put people through backgrounds. That's illegal. We have to put you through this to get you hired. And so for the jail, however, it's been a massive struggle.
Really?
People are just not interested in corrections work. I mean,
that comes from...
In one of our most recent tests, we had 118 applicants for patrol, and I think 22 for the jail. And in the jail, we're hiring about 1 out of every 14 applicants actually passes the background. So I might get 1 out of this last hiring batch, and I got 28 vacancies in my jail. So,
and you guys have the funding and stuff for the jail.
We have the money.
So it's
about actually finding people who want to do the work. And
what do you think that is with the corrections? Is there a stigma with corrections versus on the road that people just do not want associated with them? Is
corrections work, I think, mentally, it brings its own challenges. I mean, first of all, you get paid less than a patrol deputy because you don't have arrest authority. So it takes away an entire scope of the job that contains a really high liability, right? You wrongfully arrest someone, that's a kidnapping. So
right.
In the jail, it's just a completely different world. But with all these police officer vacancies, corrections deputies are seeing opportunity to go make more money and retire earlier because the retirement system is better too. And so one of the big things for the jail, though, is, not a lot of people want to go be prisoners for 12 hours a day because you're just as confined to that facility as the people who are
there.
Barred.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big challenge. But one of the things I'm looking at doing with the jail is lowering the age to 18 for applicants. And so it kind of all...
They don't carry firearms, most like the guards, right?
No,
so
only when they're transporting. So
right.
we can craft policy around that because as long as they're working under the commission, they can actually carry a firearm. It's when they go home and off duty and things like that they wouldn't be able to take the firearm home, kind of thing. But kind of my master plan. I kind of finished with this, but one of my master plans has been obviously we've seen the decrease in applications, especially for corrections. And what that tells me is that we haven't gotten enough Gen Z and millennials interested in doing this work. And it may be too late for them, right? Gen Z they're out in the workforce now, right. And it's probably too late. But my thought process is this. We have an Explorer program, which is all of our kids. I think it's 14 to 20. And, that's where you can come in and volunteer. It's a really cool program. They'll teach you how to do building searches, and they'll do radio traffic. They let you go on as many ride-alongs as you want, and you carry a radio, and they'll let you do traffic control at, like, the fair and things like that. We only have 4 kids in it. So, obviously, we have some work to do to bring that program back up. Because not that long ago, I think we had...
Does it cost money to do that program?
I don't think so. I believe it's free. We'll cover all the costs for you. So, we don't have the interest, but part of the problem, I think, is that kids in high school who are looking for something, law enforcement isn't the answer for them because they can't get hired until they're 21. Right. They have a 3-year gap where they got to figure out, am I going to college? Am I going straight into the workforce? Do I have a plan? And so we can't recruit them. That's just the reality. Like, you can't recruit people that can't apply.
Sounds like you and I have some of the same thought process. I work with a lot of the teams doing what I'm doing now. And I started thinking that same thing because the minimum age for anyone volunteering with me for just Overwatch has to be 20. To have the help consider license kind of thing.
Yeah.
I can't find guys that even
Right.
here, like adults, I can't find that want to help. That's
Yeah.
hard.
It is.
And I honestly thought that there was a lot. Like, I thought everyone, but I'm finding out it's not like that here.
No.
And to find qualified individuals to want to work in the jail
Yes.
for less pay, that's a tough one. Like, it's a hard sale.
But for a high schooler who's coming out looking to move out of their parents' house and have full medical benefits and a
Right.
living wage,
And an opportunity to transition.
it's pretty good money. And then if you do want to transition later to patrol, you've got 3 years of experience to rely on.
That's more of like a lateral
Yeah, it's an
Kind of
internal
thing?
transfer.
or
Yeah.
internal transfer.
Yeah, so you still have to test, and you still have to test high enough, but you get put on a separate list. So you don't go into the mix of 400 applicants. You go into the mix of one applicant. And we can have different categories that we hire from. With the 400 applicants, we have to go in order. With these lists, we can do multiple lists. We can rank all of these people number one and start their hiring process. So huge benefit. But my thought process was not only revamping the Explore program, but by lowering the age to 18 and getting kids interested in this career and actually having an opportunity to participate. Also, anyone who's in the Explore program, what if we gave them a 10% bonus on their testing to encourage people to get in and start getting experience in volunteering and giving them a massive bonus when they come to apply with us.
I think that would be great.
So that's kind of I'm trying, these are things that, quite frankly, probably won't benefit me as sheriff. I'm trying to do things for the next sheriff.
If you think about it, that plan alone, from 18 to 21, giving them that process or that time to work in the jail, learn the ins and outs from a young age. They're sponges still at that time. They haven't really gone out into the real world.
Yeah.
This is a perfect chance. It's kind of the same militaristic vibe. I joined at 17 and a half,
Yeah, you joined at
18
17.
years old.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you're across the world
Yeah.
doing something that you never thought you would ever be
Yeah.
doing.
And the next thing you know, you were supposed to do 4 years and you've been in for 10.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, and you're
You
like,
know?
I guess I'll keep doing this.
I guess I'll retire.
But
Yeah.
that's what we're lacking at the jail. We're getting people who get on, and within a year, they're like, I want to go be a police officer, and they leave. And it is what it is, right? We can't stop that process.
Is that something that before that was kind of like what you wanted? Because I remember when I was when I first moved here in 2015, I had met with one of the Thurston County recruiters on JBLM. God, his name was older dude, and he was really adamant about getting people in and whatnot. But it seemed as if like it didn't really seem like he had an interest for a lot of like that 400. They were really looking for guys or knowing people that were more or less already in there, or knowing somebody from a different department that might want to move over, kind of thing, or lateral transfer and whatnot.
It's kind of been an unwritten, like not advertised thing. Like if you start in the jail, you can just transfer. And so the jail, I think, to a lot of people has always been kind of looked at as a stepping stone.
Right.
And so now I'm kind of at the position of like, do we continue to pretend like that's not a thing, or do we embrace it and advertise it?
The way
and
I
use
think,
it to our favor.
if you use that program,
I think it
the
creates a funnel.
Explorers?
I think it creates
Yeah.
a kind of a roadmap for people to engage in, because otherwise, what we're left with right now is very few applicants. So it's kind of like if we don't try something different, we know what already isn't working.
I can tell you what, because I work with the youth pretty well, I have a lot of teens. I think that might be interested in something like that. Maybe I can start getting some guys interested in the Explore program. And as they're going through high school and doing all this, they see some of the stuff I do. They get Explorer certified and whatnot. Maybe that'll help. 'Cause least I can do is talk about it and let them know. Because I think giving them something outside of the normal crap that they're doing.
Yeah.
It is really what makes a difference. Like you're saying, you might have already lost this one generation of kids. They're already out in the workforce, right?
Yeah.
But this next generation, what can we do right now?
Yep.
Not later, not talk about, but what are the things that we can do right now?
Yep.
And that's part of what I like to tell people. It's like, listen, you can show them or you can tell them. Kids are going to listen to barely anything you say, but they're going to watch what you're doing and what you're not doing.
Right.
So if we can get them influenced at a younger age and show them, hey, look, this is what the explorers get to do.
Right.
And even, get your these kids love volunteer hours.
Yeah.
I'm learning.
Yeah,
they
do.
love there's some volunteer hours. And it helps
The
them
new
with
generation is not opposed to volunteering. They're not.
But
Despite what people think, they're
and
not.
that's what I was telling people on my live stream last week. I said, I have teenagers that want to help. They come and they're ready to go every day, but trying to get some adults here to come and show up is like pulling teeth sometimes.
Yeah.
So
it can be a challenge.
And I just said, you know what? Let me just take hold of what we got. And these parents are like, yeah, here, go drop them off a trip. Right. He'll be at the cafe. We'll pick him up later. Right. And I'm like, all right, I'll be here. I love it. I love it, man.
So that's kind of my plan. I have to work on kind of one thing at a time. But the first thing is that, and the union's opposing it. They don't want to go down to 18.
Really?
But I'm like, we have to try something different.
Is that for liability reasons?
Yeah, they just don't feel comfortable with it. But again, we have to try something different, and we're not alone in this. There are a number of jails across the entire country that have all come to the same realization, which is we have to go younger. We're gonna have to go younger to fill the vacancies, and the few that have done it so far have found that it has helped with hiring.
Beneficial.
Because the young kids are like, absolutely, I'll take that. You
They're
tell me
hungry,
you're gonna pay me, $62,000 a year right away with full medical benefits, so I can move out and buy a car.
Instead of having to work at Starbucks for $15 an hour.
Yeah, exactly, right?
While paying college debt.
And I can get experience. And, once you then move to the patrol division, if you choose to do that, they'll pay for a degree. They'll do all these different things.
There's a lot of great incentives for starting.
Tons of incentive to go through the program. Our biggest issue, and I haven't had a chance to do it yet, is to illustrate it to people. Haven't had a chance to illustrate it, but I also need the pieces in place first. I need to get the age lower to 18. I need to go before the commissioners to get that 5% increase if you're an explorer, and really start offering. For me, a lot of the old type of employment in recruiting has always just been, come work here. And that's not the kind of workforce that we're dealing with now. Everything we're doing, you have to incentivize. You have to remain competitive. It is an employee's
because
workplace.
they can just go to somewhere else and get it. Yeah.
I'll go anywhere else, and so it's been tough to change that mindset.
Do you think there are some opportunities for more volunteer organizations to partner with you guys for certain things
Yeah, and we do. We've got quite a few internal volunteer programs. Community Services Unit, I just had a Christmas dinner with them, and they do a ton. They're probably our most prominent volunteer group. They do a lot of our house checks, traffic control, all that kind of stuff. But the biggest inhibitor is the state laws and all the liability. So we end up basically having to use internal volunteers for everything. People that we've run background checks on and actually basically hired.
An external volunteer is still going to have to go through a screening process in order to
to do anything substantial. We do have volunteers who man our front desk and things like that.
What about teaching classes, goal setting classes or communication classes, things like that? You guys ever thought about something like that?
No.
I have certifications, and I would love to offer for you guys for free.
Yeah,
we could help out sometimes.
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that we could do.
Absolutely.
I've been going back and forth to JBLM and talking with a lot of guys that there's certain things that we could do to help influence and benefit the community that doesn't cost.
Sure.
So if there's something like that you are ever interested in, let me know.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of resources and connections to things that we could totally partner up and do, because this is the community I see that can be better if we do it the right way. And I really do think it starts with the youth. And that is where I have a benefit over where you're at, because you have to work on this upper level with these adults that are doing these adult things and signing these adult decisions.
Yeah.
While still trying to keep an interest in, hey, let's lower the age to 18. Let's make this, that's something that you can still work on the side while everything else is a catastrophe that you're working on, and I think that's really good. That's an amazing concept thing to do, because there's a lot of kids that don't even know that there is an Explorer.
Mm-hmm.
Just
done a terrible job advertising.
Even getting that out there and letting people know, that's something little I could do to help out, because I think it's great. Just like most people don't know about the PAGE program the Capitol has. It's just one of those things that I think
few people understand
people
that,
know.
Yeah, that even exists.
If I can use
I didn't
mine.
know.
I didn't know until I took her on a field trip.
I didn't know until I became the sheriff there was a PAGE program. And then I didn't even know what I was going to. They're like, hey, can you do a body cam demonstration to the PAGE school? And I'm like, what's the PAGE school? And I show up, and I'm like, ooh, this is a bunch of kids who are doing like a mock state House of Representatives. And I'm like, I'm nervous. This is crazy.
Yeah.
And they're like, sir, can you please come forward and state your name? And I'm like,
and I mean,
like,
and they're
Sheriff
serious. They're
and
serious
like,
too.
And please explain to us, what the purpose of the body cam is and how it works. And I'm like, okay. I'm going through it all, and then afterwards they're like, we are happy to announce that we have awarded you $50 million for your body cam program. It was super cool though, right?
Yeah.
But those are the kind of things that we have got to get kids into and interested, and if we don't, we are going to run out of applicants.
Yeah.
We are going to run into a point in time, and we may already be there, where the only people applying are the ones who are like, I guess, if I can't get on anywhere else, I couldn't get in the private sector, so I guess I'll do this.
That's very scary.
And we don't want to get there, right? We want people who want to be here and are interested and want to be a part of this ongoing solution. But man,
I mean, I can see right now where it's really hard for one to want to give up certain rights and abilities to want to do that job, when sometimes you can just go to the private sector and not have to worry about that and end up making a lot more for a lot less. But then there's also the opposite, where you do a lot more and you're making a lot less. Just never know.
well, and we're not the only ones facing it. Maybe the best example of this is the prosecutor's office. I feel for that guy. He's lost so many DPAs to private sector and higher paying prosecution jobs because, at least for me, like, police work doesn't really have a competitor outside of its own market. So my competitors are other police departments, and I can always look and steal, and that's fine. The prosecutor, they have to compete with corporate attorneys.
Right, and these are some big dogs.
and so imagine you go to law school, and you've got $250,000 in debt after you finish law school, and now you can go to Thurston County and make $100,000 a year to be a prosecutor, or you can go to Microsoft, Boeing, Google, and make
$300,000.
$300,000 would be the low end. I would suspect they're closer to 5 to 100 to $1 million in salary, and pay off your student loans your first year, and then buy a Corvette every year after that, and start a Corvette collection, right? Like, those are your options, and what you're really, and so the prosecutor's at the point where he's hiring kids who are in law school who haven't passed the bar. He's basically like, I'll hire you on the potential of you finishing school and passing the bar.
Really?
I mean, that's where they're at with the prosecutor. And we're kind of doing the same thing by digging into the 18-year-old realm. But, I mean, that's where we are.
You got to plant the seed. You have to plant that seed and get them interested at a young age, because what you don't want is what you just said, I guess I'll do it.
Yeah.
Why not? I guess
when it comes to the work ethic, it's going to be, well, I guess I'll do it. That's the work ethic that you get then.
Well, I've seen too, I know we got to wrap it up here in just a few minutes, but I think it's really hard for people to see a lot of what it is that's going on. They see you're overworked. They see it's underpaid to a certain degree for the amount of work that you're doing. Still expected, and it's like, why would I want to do that? Mm-hmm. Why? If I make one wrong move, I sneeze the wrong way, I'm going to be scrutinized forever based on that.
In this state, you'll go to prison.
Exactly. You know what I mean? And if you don't, now you have your own department looking at you a certain way. Like you said, nobody, like, I can see that,
Yeah.
But on the other end, we're getting to that point, and it's like, well, if we don't step up as a community, then we're going to be stepping in our own shit. And that's where I think it's really nice to see younger guy go out of their way to show us, look, it's not always pretty.
Yeah.
It's not always pretty, but at the end of the day, there are things that we can do without stretching the budget, within the limits of what we already have, getting things done.
Yep.
And like you said, you want to move fast, but there are things within the government that just don't.
They don't. And it's built that way on purpose. It's built for slow, deliberate action, which I think most of the time that's appropriate. But then when you know there are things that need to be changed immediately that are hampering and causing problems, you don't want a slow, deliberate, thoughtful, long, drawn-out, year-long decision. You need one-week decisions. You need one-week decisions, and you need the authority to move forward with things, especially when they're financially acceptable and they're moral and ethical. Like when they check those boxes and they're changes that we need to make, we need to be able to move quicker than 5 months, 6 months, a year.
And you have people that are asking or demanding answers. At the same time, it's like, well, what is going on?
Yeah.
Still under investigation.
Yep.
Still handling.
Yeah.
People don't want to hear that.
No, they don't.
People want answers.
They want answers now.
And
even as the sheriff, right? I get 4 years. I get 4 years to actually
try,
make concerted efforts to make changes or do things differently, and then it's a roll of the dice. You're fighting for your job again.
Can I just say, in 1 year, I've seen a really. It's been 11 months, right?
Yeah.
Officially 11.
Yeah, 11 months.
I've seen a lot of good things.
Yeah.
A lot of really good things.
Some good
and
stuff.
I'm proud, as not only as a friend, but like just to know you and see this transition and growth. And this community can be tough sometimes. It can be tough, just the lack of knowledge of what's going on.
Yeah.
Some of it is just ignorance. But seeing where you're going and keep pushing forward, it's very admirable, because you didn't have to try to do the job. You could have left and went anywhere else and just not dealt with it. You know what I mean? And left us here to deal. Like that's what you were ready to do. You could have.
Yeah.
You really could have. I don't have to stand on this corner of the kids' school. I don't have to.
Yeah.
No. But somebody's doing it, and that's what shows this younger generation and people just exactly how important it is to have right people doing the job.
Right.
And I say that a lot. I don't want to hire a bunch of people or get a bunch of people just because I think it's cool.
Right.
I want the right person there that wants to do this job, not just because they have to.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? You're showing people that you want to do this job.
Yeah.
That's what I like to see. Like you're showing people you want to do this job.
Yeah.
And I think that's
I just know how important it is. Like in the bottom of my heart, I know how important it is to get this right. So
think about it for guys our age that had no idea that things were like this, and they see a guy our age like, you know what? That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of, if he can do it, why not me?
100%.
you know what I mean?
I definitely approach this with especially for positions like these, they're complex, but ordinary people can take over these roles and should take over these roles, and they should push back when things don't make sense.
I believe it, man.
I've been causing a whole lot of
I hear a lot of
rocking the boat back and forth.
I hear a lot of things, but I hear mostly good things for you, man. I want to give you a present. This is my very own custom coffee. I started right.
Oh,
but I got K-Cups now.
Awesome.
I don't know if you drink. I know you like Red Bull.
Yeah.
I know you love you some Red Bull, but even if you know some guys within the office that want some coffee or something, man, I would love for
sure.
you to try it. Yeah. Let some people know. I put a little ticket in there if they want to scan and order some more coffee and stuff. Because this right here, Derek, is how I have turned into paying for the Overwatch program.
Awesome.
Since I've backed out of thinking of grants and things like that, because I don't want people telling me this is what you're going to do if we give you this money.
Right.
You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for the kids.
Right.
And I'm volunteering my time. So I'm not going to take money just so you can tell me what I need to do.
Right.
I would much rather pay for it on my own, get the right people involved. You know what I mean? And they're liking it that way better anyway. So it's like, hey, we can't tell him what to do. He's not hurting nobody. Right. And at the end of the day, what's been happening for me is really kind of cool, because I'll get a lot of local support now, a lot of good people coming out, and I'll get like one or two that think I'm terrible.
Yeah.
And they throw a huge deal online, or try even lately. They've been trying to get me in trouble outside.
Yeah.
They called the state. State called me and was like, yeah, we can't govern you. There's nothing wrong that you're doing.
Right.
So we're going to just close your case, and here's your...
Right. Yeah.
I was just like, well, we put a lot of thought into this.
Right.
It's not like I just came up and was like, this is what,
Absolutely.
we put some thought into this. But
Absolutely.
yeah, that's how we're, I pay for the program now. Keep the gas going. I just did the brakes, and we have some community partnership going on between other veteran organizations now, working for keeping veterans in their house. So I'm gonna shoot you a message later on today. It has a link. And I'm going to ask just for a favor, if you don't mind signing this petition. It's to keep veterans from being foreclosed upon right now. There's a bill, there was something in the bill that expired last year that we're trying to get put back into place so veterans aren't just thrown out on the streets right now, their families. And it just takes a couple seconds.
Sure.
And that's really all I'm asking right now is getting some signatures on this petition and keep going, man. But I want to say really thank you so much, Derek, for coming in and chatting with me. I know you're a busy man. And
no problem.
a lot. If we can, maybe we can come back in a few months or something and just, keep some quorum going and updates and stuff like that. Because I think this is great, man.
Yeah,
You're doing amazing things.
Well, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And you guys out there in the world, thank you guys. Got the coolest sheriff in town, you guys. Thank you so much. Dude, you're doing